Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the 15th edition of the FreeFuse sessions. Today, I am here with our guest, Alex Londo of Jazz June. So just to give you a little bit of background about Alex, at just 13 years old, Alex began his journey in video production as a volunteer for a local public access TV station. By 18, he had already played a key role in the creation of 500 television shows, including a fantasy football series that was featured in a Spike TV documentary. Although Alex briefly attended college, his professors recognized his exceptional talents in video production and advised him to drop out, build a portfolio, and seek employment. Today, Alex is actually the founder of Jazz June. And Jazz June is a free and user-friendly platform for creating and sharing learning content. In 2018, Jazz June was incorporated as a business and has grown to nearly 200 users. Notably, their web-based platform boasts the first ever course created by artificial intelligence. And we here at FreeFuse, of course, have also integrated with them as well as part of our partnership. So really excited to have Alex on here today. And Alex, if you want to go ahead and share any other insights and information before we hop into the interviews here.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mike, for that introduction. That was great. And yes, I have been in multimedia and video production for a long time. And if you would have told me when I was 15 years old that I was going to be the CEO and founder of an online education company, I would have probably asked you what went wrong, because I had my sights set on becoming the next Steven Spielberg or the next wonderful commercial creator, video content creator. And instead, life kind of took its twists and turns, and I discovered that my talent and my passion was actually in leadership, and it was actually in education. And so what started off as a certain career path towards the video industry success ended up turning into a wonderful journey that now lands me here working with amazing companies like yours and creating better learning content for everyone.
Yeah, and that's such a great story, and one of the things I've always talked to folks about is, I think in life we have a considerable amount of moments where we can understand that a pivot is not necessarily an admission of failure per se. It's actually a way to new opportunities that we can use our prior skills to actually transform what we're doing into something that can bring value to other people. So, even going into your own story, when you were thinking about, moving from that passion of developing films or, obviously developing content into now moving into leadership, where along the process did you kind of start to get that inclination that there was maybe another calling or this made sense to actually provide a pivot?
Yeah, right. Well, that started when I met somebody, as a lot of great things do. Very few things shape you as a person more than other people. And so I had the pleasure of meeting somebody while I was working my video career. I was the multimedia producer for Anytime Fitness for many years. I produced a lot of their commercials and member success stories, etc. And while I was working there, I met Eric, who is my other co-founder of Jazz June. And he introduced me to a whole world of instructional design and e-learning development that I never knew existed. And when we realized that we could combine our powers of video production and e-learning instructional design, we realized that there was a lot of opportunity for us together beyond Anytime Fitness, right? Just this idea of starting a learning company together, a visual content learning company is really just kind of where it started, on the back of a napkin on lunches that we would take during our full-time jobs while we were working our Monday through Friday 9 to 5s. We were taking lunches and in the hours that we could, scrambling an idea together. And eventually he came to me and said, what if we stopped trying to sell a learning management system to companies and we created a learning management system for everybody? Anyone can come and start creating learning content. You don't have to have it locked up behind these expensive, complicated platforms. And it was kind of that vein of thinking that made us realize we might be onto something here that doesn't quite exist. And so the transition from video into instructional design was mainly because of the person I met, Eric. he introduced me to the whole world and possibilities when I met him.
And it's so fascinating to actually hear how a chance meeting with somebody can lead to, so many other things, right? I always like to tell the story about back in November, I, just went to a throwaway pitch competition, right? And I was sort of thinking to myself, oh, well, I'll just go up there and kind of turn it into stand up basically and have some fun with it. But then ended up meeting somebody where, we are working on, a bunch of new initiatives together. And, and I think that there's a number of reasons why it's so important to like kind of expand the types of folks that you talk to, right? And not just consistently have yourself always running in the same circles of people, because you get exposed to new ideas and new modes of thinking. So when you and Eric were actually moving through the thought process here, which is funny because I think a lot of people look at segmentation, right? And they're like, how do we make a better mousetrap for a smaller segment of people each time? But in a sense, you've actually widened the funnel, or like widened the actual groups of people that you're trying to reach out to, right? So when you were kind of crafting this thought process and moving the platform forward, how did you sort of think through maybe going against what people would think is normalized principles for segmentation, and really thinking more about a holistic solution for everyone?
Yeah, that's such a great question, and you phrased it so well. So, we did things a little bit backwards. You're supposed to identify a market need, a market, present the idea, and then develop the product, right? Eric and I, we were just so excited that we had met each other, and we had such great ideas together. And he had so much experience in e-learning design. I mean, he got grants from the government back in 2007 to make some of the very first e-learning ever. This was before YouTube even existed. So he was definitely a leader when it came to education technology. And I was certainly a leader when it came to video production technology. And so we really felt confident that what we were going to build was the right thing, regardless of if we had the market figured out. Now I'm learning now that we probably should have figured out the market a little bit more, because that's when you have something as wide as we do, right? It's kind of hard to strike through on a specific zone. But what we understood was that basically there were three things that we gathered in our experiences about e-learning, instructional design, e-learning development. One, the platforms were very complicated. You either had to install an entire system on a server yourself and know how to actually administrate a website, or have a team of people do that. Or if it was simple, like platforms out there like Teachable were coming along, they were kind of expensive, hundreds of dollars a month even, to get access to the tools to start creating and sharing learning. And so that got us thinking. And then the last thing was, none of these platforms really handed the keys over to the people to say, you have permission to create learning content. You don't need to be a teacher. You don't always have to have a certificate behind you to teach something to somebody, right? You have experiences, you have lived experiences. Everyone has knowledge. Everyone can teach something. Everyone knows something to teach. And so we wanted to make sure we did that. We focused on making the tools as easy as possible, so there was no barrier to entry to creating content, or as little barrier to entry as possible. We wanted to make those tools low cost or free, and we made them free. Actually, all of the tools on our site are free. The only thing you can't do for free is sell your content, which we think is a very fair business model. We only profit when you stand to profit. Otherwise, if you want to come and create content for free and share it for free, that's why we're here. And so we wanted to make the tools accessible. We wanted to make them easy. And more importantly, we wanted to send a message to people that here are the keys. Here are the keys to the kingdom. Start sharing your knowledge, start teaching what you know, and start experimenting with these free tools to create content. If it's something that you enjoy doing and it's something that you can build an audience with, you can start to monetize that. And only at that point will you have to pay us. And so we thought that this business model was very disruptive. We thought that our approach to thinking about the whole entire platform, end to end from price to complexity, giving the learners what they need most. That was the other big focus, was making sure that we didn't just provide a platform with courses, that we included groups and journeys and downloads and services, so learners can access an entire suite of learning tools beyond just the courses. These are all things that were incorporated into Jazz June as we were fundamentally building the business. And I'm really proud to say that it's all come alive and it's here, and anyone can sign up for free right now and get started, which is pretty cool.
You know what's interesting about, kind of thinking through your approach is I've always thought, and it's similar to ours, right? Um, regardless of the way that we think about, product development and think about how we, there's like sort of fundamental like paradigms of like, hey, you want to develop for a specific sector or a specific market. There's verticalization, there's horizontal, sort of product development as well. It's almost like you have a key line, right? I've looked at this sort of approach, for ourselves as well, which is like having the actual key line use case, right? And for ours, it was, if you really boil down what FreeFuse does, it's really like simplifying information and making it so that it's relevantly served in the on-demand way that it should be in a particular order and sequence, right? And in your case, you've actually looked at how folks can create their own courses, but then also at the same time you've also looked at, well, we're only going to align what we're doing specifically with your purpose on the platform. Like if you're just making to make, fine, but if you're looking to sell, then we obviously will kind of assist you with that, and obviously take our share of how that's going to work as well. So I feel like, thinking about developing in thematics sometimes is actually a viable approach as well, depending on what you're doing. And, sometimes I think that we spend too much time looking at a paradigm and parroting it like, for example, and I'm sure you've experienced this, it's like the people whenever you go to a networking event for startups and they're always asking you, what problem do you solve? And it's like, look, I understand that probably a bunch of people ask you that, but you're A, not a VC, unless you are, but like you're A, not a VC, and B, like you don't need to be parroting around that, your what problem does somebody solve? Like be a normal person and have a conversation. But that's endemic of like all of the other sort of like rule of thumb things that we treat as gospel in this sort of industry. So I've always appreciated sort of the way that you've kind of approached this and talked about it, right? And I think that that's one of the things that I think really gives Jazz June sort of the life that it has, and sort of the alignment that it has with folks, is that you're really aligning to their objectives, as far as I can see.
Exactly. I mean, my wife will tell you that I'm unapologetic about basically getting in front of people's faces and saying, we're a completely free platform where we can enhance the learning experience for everybody. There's really nothing bad about it. Yes, we have a business to run. We have a model that we have to drive, and we have revenue to generate, and we obviously do that. But we are so focused on the potential of Jazz June that we're not getting too muddied down right now with trying to solve all the world's problems, as you put it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I mean, like, there's obviously value in trying to not be, there's always the adage of, if you try to become an everything tool for everybody, you make nobody happy.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so, I
we
guess
learned
like
that for a long time.
yeah, right. Like, some of the greatest, like smartest people can create, something great, but at the end of the day, like if you try to make it for every single person without, trying to look at the specific needs of a group, and in a sense, even though you've created Jazz June in a specific way, you're still like focusing on folks who are in learning and, instructional design and things like that. So here's something that I think is always such a fascinating question. When you were like building up the concepts that you were doing for the early days of Jazz June, how is it that you kind of went through the investigative process, right? You've made these assumptions, or you've made these maybe points of what you think is out there as a hypothesis in the world. How did you go about that process of confirming what you were doing and investigating that this was something that people really had an appetite for?
Yeah, another great question. So, Eric and I's combined experience made us feel like we we knew what everyone wanted, and we knew how to solve all the problems, and we knew that if we just built this thing that people would come, right? Until one day we realized that's not how it works, and that we certainly needed to find a way to gain interest with a group of people who were passionate about the same things we were, right? Solving the learning conundrum for a lot of people, whether it was too expensive to create learning content, too expensive to ingest learning content, just lowering that barrier to entry, like I talked about, easy and free tools. Nobody was doing it. And we certainly didn't want to, start charging people right away for something that we didn't feel was 100% baked. And so we went to our friends and family, the people that supported us most. His network of friends and family, my network of friends and family, heavily consisted of instructional designers, e-learning developers, content creators, and marketers, and yeah, a couple mom and dads in there too and stuff. So we got this group of around 75 people together, and we communicated with them, told them what our vision was, told them what we were looking to achieve. We weren't able to get very specific around the how we were going to do it or the technical side of it. We just knew this was the vision and this is what we wanted to bring to the world. And then we asked for their support in a non-equity way. Just literally, will you give us money? Will you just go here and swipe your credit card and money for nothing? Do you support this idea? And yes, to the tune of every single person making a donation and us raising a little over $25,000, which isn't a lot. But when you're a lean, mean tech SaaS company, you can do a lot with $25,000. It was enough for us to hire on Max, our chief technology officer, and get him really cooking on the technicals of making this work. And so it was that early support from our friends and family. My only regret about it is the fact that we targeted the network that was closest to us because it was the easiest to obtain, but it wasn't maybe the best network of people to actually use the platform and drive the platform and give the platform that traction and growth. And so while they were great early supporters and believed in us, there weren't as many content creators in that group as we had hoped for. So even after our platform was developed, we still kind of got left holding the bag going, wait a second, we don't have anyone here. Nobody's making content. How do we get people who want to be here and make content now? But that's where we're at today, which is why obviously if you're an instructional designer, e-learning developer, you should absolutely come check out our tool. It's a free account and you have nothing to lose by just coming and hitting a create a course once you have your account. But we're also looking at, because our tools are so easy to use, it's not just about having, tons of experience in instructional design development tools, e-learning authoring tools. It's about being able to put something together really easily. And so we like to think that our system works really well for teachers who know how to teach the content. They know what they want to say. They have the lesson plan, they have the curriculum, they have the outline. They just don't have that technical know-how of building out a course. And we're hoping our tools can make it easier for them and lower that barrier to entry, maybe creating another path to making money for a teacher, like a side gig. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I find interesting about the process that you mentioned just now is that a lot of people, first of all, it's kind of like you kind of basically did crowdfunding without utilizing some Kickstarter or some of this other stuff. And what I would say is it's a fascinating way to think about it, right? And I find it funny too. In that early stage, you're just kind of happy that people are using it or in some way, right? And you're like, wow, this is great, like great job for us. And then you realize, oh, this isn't the right group of people and we need to kind of like pivot the strategy here. So when you were kind of like building up that initial, I guess, like ICP of people, right? Like what were you kind of like looking for as like, this is really an ideal person? Because I think a lot of people ask that, of course, whether they're making referrals or whether they're working through like how to understand, how to market to people, they needed to figure out who this ICP person is. So how did you, after you sort of made the little hiccup with, getting those first initial people on, how quick was it that you were able to find that ICP, and what steps did you sort of take in order to refine your hypothesis?
Yeah, well, it probably took us longer than it should have, um, because we created this platform so ambiguously. It's like anyone can come and anyone can create content, and anyone can teach anything. And I remember having a conversation with an investor. We were just kind of getting to know each other. I was learning more about what it would be to take on investment, et cetera. He was kind of mentoring me, and he said something to me that at the time it irritated me, but now I look back at it as probably one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten, ever, while running a business. He asked me, "What's your captive audience?" I didn't have an answer for that. And when I was trying to explain to him, well, our captive audience is anyone with a brain. Our captive audience is anyone who can learn, or anyone who can teach. I mean, who isn't our captive audience? I mean, your dog is not our captive audience, but if you have a son or a daughter who has a brain, they are. He didn't really like that answer. Now I know why, because an investor is looking for you to come through with what's your TAM, SAM, SOM, right? Like, what are you going to drill down to at the end of the day, and who are you going to attract? What's that captive audience? He said, "No, Alex, that's not the answer I was looking for. This is what I'm trying to ask you. You are standing out in the pouring rain waiting for a taxi, and I'm the Uber. That's a captive audience. Who is standing out in the rain right now looking for your competitor when you could be a better option?" And so that really helped me after I kind of had my fit about it, because I was like, "You don't know what you're talking about. We're an everything company." Well, you can't be an everything company. It's too broad. And so that's when we really brought it down to brass tacks. And it took months almost for me to deliberate with my co-founders. We went from content creators like YouTube influencers to just like a very niche thing, like only people who want to create basket weaving courses or something, right? And we explored all kinds of possibilities. And then, I went to an education conference at the end of last year, and I learned in that conference what is unsurprising to a lot of people. Our teachers are turning over like crazy. They're leaving education in droves. The pandemic broke them. And if it's not the pandemic, it's the pay. It's the literal attack on education in some of our states, the defunding, the removal of books. Teachers are leaving in droves. And I realized Jazz June could be a really great way for them to potentially supplement their income, and wanted to think about Jazz June as a solution for these teachers. And we started, framing our thinking around that, playing with that idea. And now we're pretty focused on, of course, anyone can come. If you're on YouTube and you want to come create courses, come create courses. We don't say no to anybody. But that target that we're going for right now are people who have knowledge to share, and they want a place to do it that is free, easy.
Yeah, exactly. And when you're thinking through, of course, some of those early days, it's funny, how people try to segment segment into random places to try and like, it's kind of like throwing darts at the board, right? And you're just like hoping
Yeah.
that something like hits. Obviously there's like some level of intention to it, and when you're kind of considering sort of how you might approach some kind of small subsector of people, and I love that analogy of finding somebody in the pouring rain, right? Like that's a very good sort of metaphor for what person is essentially going to fit right in what you're doing. But equally as important, there's now sort of the thought process of, once you do even get like a few of those people, now you have to actually figure out how do you repeatedly do it, and at some kind of like underneath some kind of customer acquisition cost measured against some of the other financial aspects to understand the health of your channels. So as you were sort of crafting this, did it ever come into play about how you were going to find the correct channels, and how did you sort of evaluate what was going to be right for you to get these sort of folks who might have been teachers or might have been some other group of people? How did you actually evaluate the effectiveness and health of a channel as you were trying to bring these people on board?
Yeah, being a startup with limited resources, especially funding to market research and uncovering, customer acquisition costs. There's data in a report that I would love to have. That report's locked up behind like a $5,000 paywall. Not a lot for most companies, but we would rather use that $5,000 in other ways. And so we have to kind of use the resources available to us, the information available to us to kind of make the best decisions that we have. This is our first go at it as well. So we're learning as we go. But to answer the question pretty directly, once it was about creating a process. I think you kind of touched on it. It was about creating a process that allowed us to captivate an audience that was a message that speaks to them. Hi, you're standing in the pouring rain and we're in Uber while you wait for a taxi. Do you want to lift now? And so we present them with that kind of immediate capture, making sure, but that's where a lot of times it fizzles out. And you know this as well as I know this. The initial capture always is great. The first 75 people to join Jazz June gave us their money for nothing and then didn't make any content. Just because you're passionate, I learned this the hard way. Just because you're passionate about better learning, easier learning, cheaper learning, making learning more accessible for people, all the really, great things that come along with democratizing education, just because you're behind it and you believe in it so much that you're willing to give a little company some money, doesn't mean that you care enough to like make the content and do the work and actually make that happen, right? So we had to go find those people. And when we found those people, it was about capturing them and then bringing them through a process that made it so it was as easy as possible for them, as easy as it could ever be for them to start getting learning content created and generated. The first 3 courses on Jazz June, I created with the people because I wanted to make sure that they were getting it done, because I literally didn't want them to just go, yeah, sounds good. Okay, well, I'll finish making my course and, maybe you'll see it when you see it. And it was like, no, we don't want to see it when we see it. We want to see it now. And so we've had to kind of, I guess, force some of our users through the process. They've been very grateful for it as well, because now they have learning content that's out there for others. But it's about now taking this process and kind of expanding it, right? How can we now take more people in, capture more people, help them through the process, and then have their content land in our site?
Yeah, what's funny actually about that process is the idea of trying to get people to do habits that they don't have, right? Like,
Yeah,
we all do it. Like in the early days, you're like, this makes so much sense. It's so cool. It's like, then you get down to it and someone's like, well, I just don't do that on the regular. And when you are in the early days, you don't realize how significant a statement that is, right? Because it's
yeah,
like, if it's
yep,
not in their consciousness, it's kind of like, kind of
yeah.
out.
So my co-founder and I actually have a word for it, and we call it surveyed. He'll be like, did you get surveyed? And what we mean by that is, how when you go to a store or whatever, customer service, and you have an interaction, and before you leave, they're like, oh, and don't forget, we have a survey at the bottom here. If you don't want it, they like circle it on the receipt and everything. And they're like, if you don't mind taking 5, and you grab that receipt, and they might have been the nicest person and gave you the best experience ever. And you're like, yeah, totally. You were great today. I'll totally leave you a certain, yeah, I'll totally go on there and do it. And you grab that receipt and it's there, but that receipt ends up in the trash or washed in the pocket, and that survey never gets done. You never do it. Yeah, that's that's equivalent to the follow-up that we feel as startup founders when you launch something with somebody, but then it fizzles off. It's like, oh, you got surveyed, didn't you? Okay.
Yeah. That's so funny too, because when you think about like, there's obviously tons of folks who have written blog posts, books, messages, all sorts of social posts, whatever. They like have this little like playbook, all right, and they're like, oh yeah, like if you follow this, like you'll get better engagement with like your product, or you'll be able to get people back into the product by doing X, Y, and Z. But you realize that when you kind of carbon copy someone else's strategy, which worked for them, number one, you're not doing the critical thinking enough to actually see how that works. But number two, you're not even really like putting yourself in the shoes of the other person that you're trying to get back in, and you're discounting the crucial things: habit, necessity, timing. Like timeliness is one of the things that I feel like people get wrong the most, right? Like here's an example, right? If like, let's look at the survey example just for another moment. If you had an amazing experience and someone asked you survey wise, like, hey, can you fill out the survey? You're probably going to get that person more often than not to be like, yeah, I'll fill it out right now, right? Like, and it's why like a lot of folks do that after like customer support like calls, because they're like, well, if we did give you a good experience, then you're going to want to talk about it. If we gave you a bad one, well, you're going to want to talk about it, right? And so it's matching when the actual behavior is more likely to happen or someone is open to something new. And I feel like that's kind of the real secret to getting folks to build a habit around something, is to get them at a point where they've seen the value of something, or in the case of, I guess, like making them angry, in the case of like customer support, they want to go and write something about how pissed off they are. And that obviously works for places like Yelp, because Yelp wants you to write the bad reviews, right? Because they want people to know that this is crap, or Trustpilot, or like anything of the sort, right? So those things come intentionally as a part of the process, and it's done in a very ingenious way where at the apex of however you feel, you are ready to take action. And so I think that a lot of folks can really learn a lot from aligning where they are at in this process of value, and figuring out where is it that I can insert this new behavior, and am I actually meeting them where they are, versus trying to put on a new process that they've never experienced before, wherein the actual probability of that working is very low.
That's so true. You're exactly, and I'll hit on that, because that process is everything. Because here's the difference. If I have a wonderful customer service experience over the phone, let's say, and then after that call, very quickly, they're like, do you mind giving us 2 minutes of your time for a quick survey? And all I have to do is stay on that call, and all I have to do is hit 5 because that person was great and they gave me the refund, and I do it. I'm 90%. I think most people are 90% more likely to do it right then and there. It's easy, it's fast, the process is seamless. It's the disconnect happens is when you're physically doing something like making a purchase, and now you have a physical piece of paper you have to keep a hold of, and you have to go to a physical device and type in a physical URL. You go there, and there's a lot more steps involved. The process is not nice. It's the best process that they probably have for physical transactions, but we thought about that process for us, because we thought, well, we don't have a store, we're not selling anything, and like physically, so what can we do to kind of make ourselves more like the phone survey, where people just want to naturally move and do it. And that came from discovering that when we captivate our audience and we encourage them to sign up for free, every single person that signs up on Jazz June gets a friend request from me. Every single person. I'm like Tom on MySpace. If anyone remembers Tom from MySpace, I'm Alex from Jazz June. Everyone gets a friend request from me. Accepting my friend request on Jazz June is all you need to do to unlock the full potential of our site. Because with that friend request open, I can message you, we can set up time. I'll give you all the time you need to create and share content on Jazz June. And so we're making it as easy as possible for people by not making them go home and pull out a receipt and dial in a URL and answer all these questions. We want to make it so people can just stay on the line and type in some numbers and be on their way.
Yeah, and that's such a simplified process. And that's obviously sort of the motif of how you've designed Jazz June and the way you've looked at the whole development process. So I know we're running to time here, so I did want to give you an opportunity, of course, to plug whatever maybe promotions you're doing for Jazz June, or maybe some other initiatives that you have going on. So I did want to give you the opportunity to share anything that you'd like in the last couple minutes we got.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, anyone can always join Jazz June for free, no credit card required. With your free account, you unlock all of our tools, not just some, all of them. Create courses, groups, journeys, which are like curriculums. downloads, services, more. And you can monetize those things when you purchase our marketplace listings, which right now, if you already have existing content on a platform like Teachable or Udemy, or even if it's just sitting in the Google Drive, we'll take it from there. We'll take it from Google Docs even. If you purchase our 5 marketplace listing, which allows you to sell up to 5 things in our marketplace, any 5 things you want for an entire year for $150, we will move over your content for you automatically for free. So you can literally set up shop on Jazz June right now. If you already have content, you can set up shop on Jazz June right now for the lowest cost, $150 for the year, to sell 5 things, and we'll move it all over. We'll set it up for sale, and we'll get you all configured with that. Also, just the free resources we're providing right now in general. If you don't want to spend $150 and you just want to start creating awesome free learning content, join for free and accept my friend request. You'll get everything you need and more at that point. I promise. I have a whole team of people that are just waiting for more users. It's a great problem.
Well, those are some fantastic deals, and I do hope that folks obviously take advantage of those. We'll have a link to those in the post that we go ahead and put up, and we'll obviously to connect you as best as possible. If any of you want to, of course, talk to Alex, feel free to connect with him on LinkedIn, and we will, of course, obviously share all of the relevant pieces of information about Jazz June coming up soon, of course, through our own partnership as well, and some other posts that we'll obviously put together. So with that, just want to say thank you all so much for tuning in. We really appreciate you tuning in each week as we put these up. And I just want to thank Alex again for his time this week, all of the great insights. And we look forward to seeing all of you next week for our next FreeFuse sessions. Have a great rest of your day.